Some hundreds of years ago, the highest ruling power in a state was the head clerk of any one religion practiced in that particular country. Over the years, there was a separation between the state and the church. Obviously, not every country makes that distinction. Therefore, with this new Human Rights Act, we encourage the prosecution of any crimes regardless of any religious background. The law of the land you chose to live must apply to all of its inhabitants. No laws or any religious dogma can be allowed to harm or endanger a citizen. Paying attention to patterns is very useful when trying to understand what is actually happening on a global scale. Tactics used other than divide and conquer. Their main idea is to create an illusion that you are not in control of the decisions taken by the people elected in government or parliament. Many will even say this outright, that you should give up your decisional power or to give up on some of your freedoms. They do that so they can get more power. In many countries where there is an international banking institution, imposing some restrictions for any loans given, most often than not you'll find a parasitic pattern. In much the same way, for example, where you see people arrested for standing up for their physical safety. The one person hired by and paid for by the taxpayers is acting contrary to their job description. This example is applied to most public elected institutions, and can be clearly seen when any and all decisions taken by them are not in the interest of the citizens and are meant to even further oppress them, which is another reason why in some countries, some authority institutions are emphasized. For them to make sure we keep embedded in our head an authority element put in place and imposed by this parasitic, hidden, and oppressive structure, which actually pulls the strings in many of these countries. Now, it is safe to say that whoever they may be, they are thoroughly familiar with most aspects of a human being. Hence, it is wise to look deeply into some of the decisions the elected officials make, especially when, on a first glance, might be considered stupid. They are well aware that your belief system generates your feelings. Your feelings are strongly related to how you react to any particular situation. Let's choose an example known to most people regarding beliefs. Nadia Comaneci. Ever since she was young, she had this belief that if she tried to think like a boy, that would help her be better at doing her gymnastic exercise better. If you asked me, I think it had to do with focus on a singular task at a time. I may be wrong, but to think like a boy can mean a lot of things. This explanation makes sense to me. Anyway, that kind of thinking ended up helping this esteemed lady get a perfect 10 score for a flawless gymnastic number. This is what beliefs can do. Now, an example of how they make any of us react. There was this young woke girl being very passionate about some progressive idea. Don't remember exactly what it was, but I surely remember she was in a heated debate with someone else. As a result, she started to become somewhat esoteric, taking her belief into that energy. And when she reached the highest limit, she started laughing about it because I think she realized it made no sense. Hence, she could have that belief no longer. That is why there should be no laws on offensive reactions or how any particular human being chose to conduct themselves when dealing with anything said by another fellow citizen. Because it comes down to your mental salubrization when dealing with other people. In short, for a long time we have been under oppression, and you can see that in history. Look at all the patterns and cultural changes over the years. The control of all important resources and their pricing, the news you watch presented oftentimes by journalists with a strong snake lips. The starving of people, dehumanizing of the agricultural landowners, the repeating of the Sodom and Gomorrah, the massive inflation during the Great Depression, having people with different religious beliefs at each other's throat, and so on. These things have been applied to many countries in different timelines as experiments, and over time they build a general profile of that population. Their resilience, breaking points, and so on. I don't think there's a perfect system from what we know at the moment. The capitalism system isn't great, but has its functionality, even though it has a strong psychopathic element to it. Anything for a profit. Communism is more like a control freak over the working class by the tyrannical oppressor. That's why I think it's not very wise to be an extreme left-leaning individual, unless you're in control of many resources. Otherwise, you're like a cattle herding yourself into the barn. A tool would be another appropriate word for that. So whenever you see a right-leaning successful person who's been making a lot of money make a complete ideological rotation from right to left, creating almost like a spiral with two sides overlaying each other on the ideological left. The top one is reserved for all wealthy and influential people, and the other one is the beneficiaries of the socialist budget-affiliated people. A solution would be as follows. There is some supervisor training out. They're explaining what types of situations and types of qualified workers. D1 doesn't know what to do and isn't motivated to do it, so the supervisor's role would be to fix all of the above, somehow. D2 doesn't know what to do, but the individual is willing to learn, so the supervisor has to fix the knowledge part. D3 does know what to do, but isn't really motivated to do. Here, the supervisor has to use his or her skills to fix this part. D4 knows what to do and is motivated in doing the job, so here the supervisor needs only to intervene whenever necessary. By this analogy, we could look at some of the towns and cities which would need what kind of help and or distribution of resources.